On July 29, 1988, Mary Beezer and 38-year-old Diane Benegoni went to meet a group of friends, including Mary's sister, Irene, at a popular dance club in St. Louis.
It's the first time Diane had ever met my sister or any of the other people at the table. And all I had to do was introduce Diane to them. And, I mean, Diane's so easy to talk to. She sat down with my sister and just started jabbering.
Diane was a very fun-loving, easygoing sort of person. She enjoyed herself. I noticed nothing that would have given me any indication that she had any kind of a problem.
We were just having a real good time. Everybody was up off the table, and she just started really getting into it. Well, she said, man, I'm having a great time. So it was like she didn't realize what she was up for when she went there. I went to talk to her, and her head was bobbing, and I said, Diane, are you okay? She didn't answer me. So I kind of leaned over, and I said, Diane, are you okay? And I was shaking her shoulder, and her eyes were like half closed, and then I knew something was wrong.
I thought maybe something was obstructing her throat, and her face was kind of clenched, jaws were all tight. The only thing I remember her doing is taking one deep breath in, and she just stopped.
I thought maybe she was hyperventilating. I got on one side of Diane, and Irene got on the other, and we were both trying to feel for pulses, and we couldn't feel them.
And I do have training in CPR. And I was thinking to myself, do I remember enough CPR to be able to save somebody's life?
Someone ran to ask the band to make an announcement for help. The singer, Carol Rowley, responded.
It was unusual for somebody to come up and say, we need medical attention, emergency. I'm a nurse, so I just left the stage and went over to see how she was. She looked bad. She was a little cyanotic around the mouth. I reached for her wrist for a radial pulse, and it was really rapid and weak. I heard her heart rate. It was very irregular. And then it just stopped. Dead, cold. There was nothing.
Can I have your attention, please? This is important. We have an emergency. We need a doctor or a nurse.
Dr. Steve McNally was in the crowd that night.
I walked across the ballroom, and that's where I saw Diane laying on the floor, unresponsive. Went up and checked the pulse in her arm and didn't feel a pulse. And at the same time, there was a nurse there, and at that point, we began CPR.
At 9:29 p.m., an employee of the club called 911. The nearest available ambulance was on the other side of the city. Paramedic John Figline and his partner responded immediately.
To respond to a 342.
It's a busy Saturday night, and the ambulances that were near the Casa Loma Ballroom were on other assignments, so we were the closest, even though we were 6 miles away.
There's no real direct highway route. It's probably close to 60, 70 some blocks of city streets, traffic lights. In order to arrive safely, you have to drive with that in mind.
It was getting pretty frightening for me because I'm thinking, oh no, she's so young. You know, this could be me.
They were doing the CPR, but you could still see that her face was turning purple. I'm like going, oh my God, you know, this can't be happening. I mean, it feels like you're losing a sister.
There was another woman came up and knelt beside me and said that she was a nurse at St. John's Hospital. Would I need some assistance? And I said, yes, please, because it wears you out. I was really running low on energy.
Breathe, keep going. Don't stop.
Sandy Curlis joined Carol in two-person CPR.
I knew we had to do CPR, but I already felt that she was already dead. There was no response at all. She was completely lifeless. The time frame seemed like a long time. I just started feeling in a panic. And we had absolutely not even a blink of an eye response at all. No movement whatsoever. It's my experience that it just never takes that long. You either get a response or it's, you stop CPR. I mean, you can only do that so long.
We would intermittently stop to be checked to see if there was a pulse, to see if there were respirations, and at no time did we ever have a response of any kind.
We were all like talking to her and telling her not to be afraid, to go on ahead and breathe, and you can do it, and you can do it. And I kept saying, Diane, you're not going to die on me, you're going to breathe.
Once you start CPR, you can't stop, but you start to feel a little bit of panic because you know that the probability of brain damage is very acute at this point.
I mean, you're thinking that you're going to wake up and she's going to be okay. And all I could do is just say a prayer.
By the time paramedics arrived, almost 20 minutes had passed since Diane Benegoni's heart stopped beating.
The patient, when we arrived, was unresponsive. She was basically had died. Her heart had stopped.
Got the cardiac monitor out. My partner did a quick look with the paddles and had the ventricular fibrillation rhythm, which is heart's really not putting out any kind of electrical activity. It's not doing anything. And then we deliver a defibrillation and shock the heart, try and reestablish the electrical pathway.
Normally, you defibrillate them once, and if they're going to come out, they're going to come out right away.
The defibrillation did not work. There was no response.
The next thing in your mind has to be, okay, that didn't work. What do I do next? Check a pulse, check the monitor, continue CPR, and give another shock.
The age she's at, her late 30s, I figured, boy, one jolt is going to bring her around. And that was scary because she didn't jump right to like that.
I'm getting a pulse. I'm getting a pulse here.
We defibrillated her 3 times before we got her rhythm back.
We established an IV line, got the patient intubated so that we could use a mask, and administered some cardiac medications to ensure that the rhythm would not reconvert to the original rhythm we had had.
When she got a heart rate showing on the scanner, that's when I was relieved because I knew that there was at least hope.
Diane was rushed to Lutheran Hospital. Dr. Randy Johnson was on call.
Diane apparently underwent sudden death. Her neurologic function, when she came in, was minimal. Her neurologic function would hopefully come back. A great deal of people, it doesn't. It's basically God's will and time.
For 6 days, Diane lay in a coma. Her mother, Helen, kept a constant vigil at her bedside.
Diane was very important to me because that's all the family I have left. I had to rely on the doctors that were there, the hospital personnel, faith, hope, and prayers.
Mary never lost hope that her friend would come out of the coma.
I said, look over here. And she looked over at me, and I took her hand, and I said, Diane, squeeze my hands, squeeze my fingers. And she did. I mean, it was real light, but she squeezed them. And she kind of looked up at me, and we both, she had a big tear in her eye. And then I knew that everything was going to be A-okay. It would just take time.
In the months following the incident, Diane has made a full recovery from her sudden death attack. She now wears a special defibrillator implant that monitors and corrects heart irregularities.
I really don't remember exactly what happened. I don't remember anything about the day. But the amazing thing about it is that I don't have any side effects from it. You know, I mean, there's no loss of motor skills, no loss of anything. It's truly a blessing.
Diane was extremely lucky that she had a witnessed sudden death, and people were available that knew how to perform appropriate cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
The American Red Cross has a course. It takes an hour to learn it, and it's well worth your time. If you only use it once in your lifetime, that's enough.
Diane has since gotten married. Both she and her husband are grateful to the people who gave her a second chance at life.
They responded to my needs without hesitation. They will be carried in my heart and my thoughts and my prayers for the rest of my life.
Next,
no one really knew how long he had been hanging, I was pretty nervous that he was not going to wake up.